Hi, I'm Emily Parker. My life was a perfect picture. At least, that's how it seemed. For most of my life, I believed my family loved me as much as I loved them. I had a father I admired, a mother who nurtured us, and a younger sister, Kate, who seemed to shine in every room she entered. But the thing about pictures is, sometimes the frame hides the cracks. And my story? It begins with a crack I didn't even know existed. I was adopted when I was just 6 months old. My parents, James and Linda Parker, always made sure I felt like I was their own flesh and blood. Growing up, I didn't know life any other way. My dad used to say, "Emily, you were chosen. That makes you special." And for years, I believed it. Kate was born 2 years after my adoption. She was everything you'd imagine a golden child to be: beautiful, charismatic, and effortlessly charming. My parents adored her, but I never felt jealous. Why would I? We were sisters, and I loved her. I thought she loved me too. Fast forward to adulthood, I was the one who took an interest in the family business. My dad had started Parker Innovations from scratch, turning it into a modestly successful company. After college, I joined the company full-time. I poured my heart into it, and soon I was spearheading projects, landing major deals, and making decisions that skyrocketed the company's growth. In just 6 years, Parker Innovations went from a small firm to a $100 million enterprise. My dad would often say, "Emily, you've done more for this company than I ever could have dreamed." Hearing that made every sleepless night worth it. Kate, on the other hand, had a different life. She pursued her passions: travel, art, and luxury. She didn't have to work because she had our parents' financial support. And why not? She was their little star. I never resented her for that. After all, we each had our own paths. But things started to shift when Dad's health began to decline. It was nothing too alarming at first, just some fatigue, some forgetfulness. He insisted he was fine. But as time went on, I took on more and more of his responsibilities. It wasn't long before I was practically running the company. I thought I was doing what any loving daughter would do. Then came the dinner that changed everything. It was a Saturday evening, a rare night when the whole family was together. My parents, Kate, her fiancé Ryan, and I sat around the table. Dad was in high spirits, laughing and telling old stories. The wine flowed, the food was delicious, and for a moment everything felt perfect, until Kate spoke. "Emily," she began, her voice as sweet as honey but carrying an edge I hadn't heard before. "I've been meaning to talk to you about the company." I looked up, surprised. "What about it?" "Well," she hesitated, glancing at Dad, then Mom. It doesn't seem fair, does it, that you get to run everything?" The words hit me like a slap. I forced a smile, trying to keep the mood light. "Fair? Kate, you've never even been interested in the business." "That's not the point," she said, her tone sharpening. "Dad built Parker Innovations for the family, not just for you." I looked to my parents for support, but they were silent. Mom stared at her plate, and Dad's smile had vanished. My heart sank. "Kate," I said carefully, "I've been working at the company for years. I've—" "You've made it your empire," she interrupted, her voice rising. "It's like you think you're the only Parker who matters." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Kate, this isn't about me thinking I'm better. I've worked hard because I care about the family and the company. Why are you bringing this up now?" "Because it's time things were balanced," she said, crossing her arms. You're not even a real Parker. The room went silent. My breath caught in my throat. Did I hear her right? What did you say? I asked, my voice trembling. She shrugged, her expression smug. You're adopted, Emily. Don't pretend you didn't know. I felt the world tilt. My eyes darted to my parents, searching for denial, for reassurance. But all I saw was guilt in their eyes. They had never said those words out loud, never acknowledged the obvious truth I had buried deep down. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My mind raced with memories, trying to piece together what I just heard. Kate, Dad finally said, his voice strained. That's enough. But the damage was done. Kate leaned back in her chair, satisfied, while I sat there shattered. Why now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why would you say that now? Kate smirked. Because it's the truth, and it's time we stop pretending. You've taken enough, Emily. Taken enough? I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout that I had given everything, my time, my energy, my heart, to this family. But instead, I sat there, stunned, as the evening dissolved into silence. Later that night, I overheard Kate talking to Ryan. Don't worry, she said, her voice low but venomous. She won't be in charge for much longer. Dad's on my side. I clenched my fists. My mind was a storm of confusion, anger, and betrayal. What did she mean, Dad's on her side? And why would he be? I didn't have answers, but I knew one thing. My life would never be the same again. The days after that disastrous dinner were a blur of confusion and hurt. Kate's words echoed in my mind. You're not even a real Parker. That line was a splinter, burrowing deeper into my heart with every passing moment. But what stung even more was the silence of my parents. They hadn't rushed to my defense, hadn't told Kate she was out of line. Instead, they'd sat there, complicit in my humiliation. I buried myself in work to distract from the ache in my chest. Parker Innovations was my safe haven, the one place where I felt valued. But even that sanctuary began to crumble. I noticed subtle changes, meetings I wasn't invited to, decisions being made without my input. When I asked my father about it, he waved me off, claiming he was just delegating some responsibilities. I'm still the CEO, Emily, he said, his tone kind but firm. You don't need to worry. But I was worried. For years, he'd trusted me with every major decision. Now it felt like he was pulling away, and I couldn't understand why. The tension at home didn't help. Kate seemed to relish the growing distance between me and my parents. Her smug glances and passive-aggressive comments chipped away at my patience. Then, one morning, I walked into my office to find Kate sitting in my chair. She spun around slowly, a self-satisfied smirk on her face. "Good morning, Emily," she said, as if she belonged there. "What are you doing in my office?" I asked, keeping my tone even. "Our office," she corrected, standing up. "Dad asked me to start getting involved in the business. He said it's time I learned the ropes." I blinked, stunned. Since when? "Since he realized this isn't just your company," she said, brushing past me. "Don't worry, I'll try not to step on your toes too much." Her words burned, but I forced myself to stay calm. I couldn't let her see how deeply she was affecting me. Instead, I focused on what mattered, my work. I told myself that if I just kept my head down and delivered results, everything would fall back into place. But things only got worse. A week later, my father called a family meeting. We gathered in the living room, the air thick with tension. Kate sat beside Ryan, her fiancé, looking smug as ever. My mother avoided my gaze, and my father wore an expression I couldn't read. "I've made a decision about the company," he began, his voice steady but lacking its usual warmth. "Effective immediately, Kate will be joining the board of directors." My heart sank. "Dad," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "She doesn't have any experience. She doesn't even know how the business works." "She'll learn," he replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. Kate leaned forward, feigning concern. "Don't worry, Emily. I'm not trying to take over. I just want to support the family." Support the family? The words felt like a slap. I'd been supporting the family, pouring every ounce of my energy into the company while she flitted from one hobby to the next. And now she was being handed a position of power on a silver platter. I wanted to fight back, to argue, but the look on my father's face stopped me. He wasn't going to change his mind. This wasn't a discussion, it was a decree. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with questions. Why was my father doing this? Why was he letting Kate undermine everything I'd worked for? I thought about confronting him, demanding answers, but a part of me was afraid of what I might hear. Then, the first real blow came. The next morning, I arrived at work to find an email waiting for me. It was from the accounting department, flagged as urgent. My stomach churned as I opened it. The message was short and devastating. Subject: Unauthorized transactions. Emily, we've noticed several large transactions in the company's accounts that haven't been approved through the usual channels. Could you please clarify? Attached was a list of the transactions, thousands of dollars siphoned off into an account I didn't recognize. My hands trembled as I read through the report. This wasn't just a mistake, it was theft. And someone was making it look like I was responsible. Panic set in. I immediately called the head of accounting, a no-nonsense woman named Karen, who had always been loyal to me. "Karen, I didn't approve any of these transactions," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This has to be a mistake." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Emily, the approvals are coming from your credentials. If it's not you, then someone has access to your account." My blood ran cold. Someone was framing me. But who? And why? The answer seemed obvious, but I didn't want to believe it. Kate wouldn't go this far. Would she? I spent the rest of the day trying to trace the transactions, but whoever was behind them had covered their tracks well. By the time I got home, I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. As I walked through the door, I heard voices coming from the dining room. Kate and Ryan were there, talking to my parents. I stopped just outside the room, listening. "She's been acting so defensive lately," Kate was saying. "I just hope she's not hiding anything." "She's under a lot of pressure," my mother replied, her tone gentle but uncertain. "That's no excuse," Kate said. "If she's doing something unethical, we need to address it before it hurts the company." My heart pounded in my chest. She was planting seeds of doubt, turning my own family against me. I wanted to storm in, to confront her, but I held back. I needed proof that she was behind the transactions, proof that she was trying to sabotage me. But how could I get it when my own family was starting to believe her lies? That night, as I lay in bed, one thought consumed me. Kate wasn't just trying to take the company, she was trying to destroy me. And if I didn't act soon, she just might succeed. I woke up the next morning with a new resolve. I couldn't let Kate continue this game. If she wanted a fight, she'd get one, but I needed to play it smart. Rushing in without evidence would only make me look guilty, and that's exactly what she wanted. The first thing I did was contact Karen again. "Karen," I said, my voice steady but urgent, "I need you to help me dig deeper into those transactions. Can we trace the IP addresses or logins associated with the approvals?" Karen hesitated. "Emily, I'll do my best, but if this gets out, it could raise a lot of questions. Are you sure you want to pursue this?" "I don't have a choice," I replied. "Someone is framing me, Karen. I need to prove it." She agreed to help, but I could tell she was wary. Meanwhile, I started looking into the company's internal systems on my own. Late into the night, I combed through emails, transaction logs, and anything else that might give me a clue. It was tedious work, but I refused to give up. Days turned into weeks, and the tension at work only grew. Kate seemed to be everywhere, showing up to meetings she had no business attending, sweet-talking employees who had always been loyal to me. She was charming, yes, but there was something calculated about her every move. She wasn't just learning the ropes, she was tightening a noose. Then came the bombshell. One afternoon, my father called me into his office. As I walked in, I noticed Kate sitting on the couch, her arms crossed and a satisfied smirk on her face. My stomach twisted. Whatever this was, it wasn't good. "Emily," Dad began, his tone uncharacteristically stern, "we need to talk about some concerns that have come to my attention." "Concerns?" I repeated, sitting down. "What concerns?" Kate jumped in before he could respond. "There's been some irregularities in the company's finances," she said, feigning concern. "Dad and I thought it was best to address them directly with you." I turned to my father, my heart pounding. "Dad, I don't know what she's talking about. I've been working non-stop to grow this company. Why would I do anything to jeopardize it?" "I want to believe you, Emily," he said, his voice softening. "But the evidence is troubling. These transactions—" "I didn't authorize them," I interrupted, unable to contain my frustration. "Someone is using my credentials. I've been trying to figure out who, but I need more time." Kate let out a small, pitying laugh. "Emily, you don't have to make excuses. If there's something going on, if you're in trouble, we can help you, but you need to be honest." I glared at her. "You're the one behind this, aren't you? You've been trying to undermine me from the start." Her eyes widened in mock surprise. "Me? Emily, that's ridiculous. Why would I do something like that?" "Because you want the company," I shot back. "You've been manipulating Dad, turning him against me." "That's enough." Dad's voice cut through the room like a whip. I turned to him, stunned. He had never spoken to me like that before. "Emily," he said, his tone heavy with disappointment, "I've always trusted you. But right now, I need to put the company first. Until we can get to the bottom of this, I'm placing you on administrative leave." I froze, his words sinking in like a dagger. "Administrative leave," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, you can't be serious. I didn't do this." "I don't have a choice," he said, looking away. "The board is already asking questions. This is the best way to protect you and the company." Kate leaned back, a satisfied glint in her eyes. She had won this round, and she knew it. I stood up, my legs trembling. "Fine," I said, my voice cold. "But I'm going to prove the truth, and when I do, you'll see exactly who's been pulling the strings." Without waiting for a response, I walked out of the office, my head held high. But inside, I was falling apart. My own father had sided with Kate, and now I was being pushed out of the company I had built. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the city lights outside my window. My mind was a storm of emotions: anger, betrayal, despair. I had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, and now it was all slipping away. But as the hours passed, my despair hardened into determination. If Kate wanted a war, she'd get one. But I wouldn't fight it her way, with lies and manipulation. I'd fight it with the truth. And the truth, I was certain, would destroy her. The next morning, I met with Karen in secret. She had managed to trace one of the suspicious transactions to a specific device, a laptop registered to someone within the company. When she told me the name, my blood ran cold. It was Ryan, Kate's fiancé. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It all made sense now: why Kate had been so confident, why she had escalated her attacks. She wasn't working alone. Ryan was helping her, covering their tracks and making it look like I was the culprit. But how could I prove it without tipping them off? I needed more evidence, something irrefutable. And I needed to act fast before they destroyed everything I had worked for. As I left the meeting with Karen, a plan began to take shape in my mind. It was risky, but it might just work. If I could get access to Ryan's laptop, I could find the proof I needed. The thought of going behind their backs made my stomach churn, but I didn't have a choice. They had crossed every line, and now it was my turn to fight back. Little did they know, their perfect little scheme was about to unravel, and when it did, the fallout would be devastating. The stakes had never been higher, and I was running out of time. Every day I spent away from Parker Innovations felt like another nail in the coffin of my career. The whispers among employees, the board's doubts, and my father's cold indifference were all orchestrated by Kate and Ryan. But now I had a weapon: the knowledge that Ryan was involved. The plan to get access to Ryan's laptop was fraught with risk, but it was my only option. I needed solid evidence, something undeniable that would expose their scheme. Karen had promised to keep our findings under wraps for now, but the longer this dragged on, the more dangerous it became. To execute my plan, I needed an opening, some way to get close to Ryan without raising suspicion. That opportunity came in the form of a Parker family tradition: Kate's engagement party. The event was nothing short of extravagant, a showcase of wealth and status that Kate seemed to revel in. The Parkers had rented out an upscale venue, complete with crystal chandeliers, a live string quartet, and tables adorned with elaborate floral arrangements. It was the kind of event that screamed perfection, just like Kate wanted. As I walked into the party, I felt the weight of dozens of eyes on me. Guests whispered behind their champagne glasses, and I could almost hear their unspoken questions. What is she doing here? Doesn't she know she's been sidelined? I ignored them and scanned the room, looking for Ryan. He was standing by the bar, chatting with a group of men in tailored suits. Kate was nowhere in sight, likely busy basking in the attention of her adoring fans. My heart pounded as I made my way over. Ryan looked up, his expression shifting from surprise to polite indifference. "Emily," he said, raising his glass in a mock toast. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I'm still part of the family, aren't I?" I replied with a tight smile. "Besides, I wanted to congratulate you and Kate in person." "Thanks," he said, his tone dripping with insincerity. "That means a lot."
I resisted the urge to roll my eyes. Listen, I continued, leaning in slightly. I've been meaning to talk to you about something. It's about the company.
Ryan stiffened.
I thought you were on leave.
I am, I said quickly.
But there are some things I think you should know. Do you have a minute to chat privately?
He hesitated, clearly suspicious. But before he could refuse, I added, "It's about Kate. I'd rather not discuss it in front of everyone." That did the trick. His eyes flickered with curiosity, and he nodded. "Fine, let's step outside." We moved to the balcony, where the cool evening air was a welcome contrast to the stuffy atmosphere inside. Ryan leaned against the railing, his expression guarded. "So, what's this about?" he asked. I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "I know Kate's been under a lot of pressure lately with the wedding and everything, and I know you're just trying to support her, but..." I trailed off, feigning uncertainty. "But what?" he prompted, his tone impatient. I took a deep breath. "I've noticed some things, at work I mean, that don't add up. Transactions that don't make sense. Decisions being made without proper approval. I can't prove anything yet, but I think someone's trying to frame me." Ryan's expression didn't change, but I caught the faintest flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt? Fear? It was hard to tell. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice steady. "If there's an issue, you should take it up with the board." "I would," I said, stepping closer. "But whoever's doing this is smart. They've covered their tracks well. Too well." He shifted uncomfortably, and I pressed on. "Look, Ryan, I'm not accusing you of anything. But if you know something, anything, it would mean a lot if you told me, for Kate's sake, if nothing else." His jaw tightened. "I have no idea what you're talking about." I nodded, pretending to accept his denial. "Okay, I just thought you should know." As I turned to leave, I added casually, "Oh, by the way, congratulations on the new laptop. I hear those models are top of the line." He froze for a split second before recovering. "Thanks," he said, his tone flat. That was all the confirmation I needed. The next phase of my plan required patience. I couldn't risk tipping Ryan or Kate off, so I waited for the perfect moment. It came later that night, when Ryan left his laptop unattended in the private lounge area reserved for family. The room was empty when I slipped in, my heart racing. The laptop was sitting on the coffee table, its screen dark. I opened it carefully, praying that it wasn't locked. To my relief, it wasn't. I quickly inserted a USB drive Karen had given me, designed to copy files and data without leaving a trace. The seconds felt like hours as the drive worked, pulling everything it could: emails, transaction logs, browser history. Finally, the light on the drive blinked green, signaling it was done. I removed it just as the door opened. "Emily?" I turned to see Kate standing in the doorway, her expression suspicious. "What are you doing in here?" Thinking fast, I smiled. "Just needed a quiet moment. It's a little overwhelming out there." She frowned, clearly unconvinced. "This room is for family." "I am family," I said, brushing past her. "Unless you've forgotten." That night, I met with Karen in a secluded coffee shop. We plugged the USB drive into her laptop, and the screen lit up with files, dozens of them, all pointing to the same thing. Ryan had been siphoning money from the company, routing it through dummy accounts before transferring it to an offshore account. But that wasn't the most shocking discovery. Buried among the files was an email exchange between Ryan and Kate. The messages were damning, outlining their entire plan to frame me and take control of the company. As I read through the emails, a mix of anger and relief washed over me. I finally had the proof I needed, but exposing them wouldn't just clear my name, it would destroy my family. The question now was I ready to do it? The truth was in my hands. It was damning, undeniable, and devastating. Ryan and Kate had meticulously planned this scheme for months, fabricating transactions, doctoring emails, and manipulating everyone around them. I had all the evidence I needed to clear my name and expose their betrayal. But now, a heavier question loomed over me. Was I ready to shatter my family? The next morning, I sat in my apartment, staring at the USB drive on my kitchen table. Every fiber of my being screamed for justice, but another part of me hesitated. Dad, could I risk breaking his heart? For all his misguided decisions, he had always been the rock in my life. The thought of watching him realize the daughter he cherished, the golden child, had orchestrated such a cruel betrayal made my chest tighten. But then I thought about the humiliation I had endured, the whispered accusations, and the weight of my father's disappointment pressing down on me like a stone. I had been cast aside like a stranger, all because of their lies. And that was when I knew the truth had to come out, no matter the cost. The perfect opportunity came quicker than I expected. Kate and Ryan's wedding day was just 2 weeks away, and the entire family was in a frenzy preparing for the grand event. It was a lavish affair, scheduled to take place in an opulent countryside estate with a guest list that included business magnates, celebrities, and the elite of society. Kate basked in the spotlight, parading her perfect life like a trophy. She never suspected that her big day would become her worst nightmare. But I wasn't going to rush. Revenge is best served cold, and I needed my timing to be flawless. On the morning of the wedding, I arrived at the estate dressed in a simple but elegant gown. I blended seamlessly into the sea of well-dressed guests, exchanging pleasantries and hiding my nerves behind a practiced smile. Kate had been too consumed by the wedding to notice I was there, and I intended to keep it that way until the right moment. As the ceremony began, I watched from the back row, my hands gripping the small envelope in my lap. Inside were printed copies of the emails, transaction logs, and evidence of the offshore accounts, all the proof anyone needed to see the truth. I had also sent digital copies to multiple secure locations, just in case. The ceremony was a blur. Vows were exchanged, rings slipped onto fingers, and cheers erupted as Kate and Ryan were pronounced husband and wife. But I barely heard any of it. My heart pounded as I waited for the reception, where I planned to drop the bombshell. The reception hall was a dazzling display of extravagance. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the air was filled with the sound of clinking glasses and soft laughter. Kate and Ryan glided through the crowd like royalty, basking in the adoration of their guests. As I waited for the right moment, I caught sight of Dad standing by the bar. He looked proud, even happy, which only made my resolve stronger. He deserved to know the truth, even if it would hurt. When the time came for speeches, the room fell silent as Dad stood up to address the crowd. His speech was heartfelt, filled with anecdotes about Kate's childhood and his hopes for her future. I could feel the weight of every word, knowing what was about to come. As he finished, the crowd erupted into applause, and Kate rose to thank him, her radiant smile filling the room. But before she could speak, I stood up. "Excuse me," I said, my voice cutting through the applause. "I have something to say." All eyes turned to me, and the room fell silent. Kate's smile froze, and Ryan's face paled. "What are you doing, Emily?" Kate asked, her voice laced with warning. I stepped forward, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "I've kept quiet for too long, but I can't anymore. There's something everyone here needs to know." I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope, holding it up for everyone to see. This is proof of how Kate and Ryan framed me, stole from the company, and betrayed our family. Gasps rippled through the crowd as murmurs erupted. Kate's eyes widened in shock, and Ryan looked like he wanted to sink into the floor. "Emily! Stop this nonsense right now!" Kate snapped, her voice shrill. I ignored her and turned to my father. "Dad, I know you've always trusted Kate, but she's been lying to you. She and Ryan have been stealing from the company and blaming it on me. I have the evidence right here. I handed the envelope to him, and the room watched in stunned silence as he opened it. His face went pale as he scanned the documents, and his hands trembled. James, don't listen to her, Kate said, her voice desperate. She's just trying to ruin my wedding. Is that true? Dad asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Did you do this, Kate? She faltered, her confident facade crumbling. I was just trying to protect the company, she stammered. Emily's been reckless, and I... Stop lying, I shouted, cutting her off. The emails, the accounts, it's all in there. You can't talk your way out of this. The room erupted into chaos as guests whispered and murmured. Kate tried to argue, but the evidence was irrefutable. Ryan stood frozen, unable to defend himself. Dad's face hardened as he looked at Kate. I trusted you, he said, his voice heavy with betrayal. How could you do this? Kate burst into tears, but there was no sympathy left in the room. The truth was out, and there was no escaping it. As I watched the scene unfold, a mix of emotions washed over me. Relief, sadness, and a bittersweet sense of justice. The family I thought I had was gone, but so was the shadow of their betrayal. For the first time in months, I felt free. The room was a cacophony of shocked murmurs, gasps, and heated whispers. Kate's dream wedding had turned into a public exposé of lies and betrayal. She stood frozen in her ivory gown, tears streaming down her face as the weight of her deception settled over her. Ryan was silent, avoiding everyone's eyes, knowing there was no escape. My father, James Parker, sat at the head table, staring down at the damning documents in his hands. His expression was a mixture of disbelief and heartbreak. The man who had built his empire with pride and integrity was now faced with the truth that his own daughter, the one he trusted above all else, had betrayed him. Is this all true? Dad's voice was a low rumble, but it carried through the room. Kate stumbled over her words. Dad, It's not what it looks like. I was only trying to... Enough, he said, cutting her off. The authority in his tone silenced the entire hall. I want the truth, Kate. Did you and Ryan frame Emily and steal from the company? Kate hesitated, her confidence shattered. Ryan finally broke his silence, stepping forward with a desperate expression. James, listen. This was all a misunderstanding. We can fix this. Dad slammed his fist on the table, making everyone jump. I said enough. I'm done with your lies. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of regret and sorrow. Emily, I need to hear it from you. How long have you known? I took a deep breath, my voice steady but filled with emotion. I suspected something was wrong when the board accused me of embezzlement. But I didn't have proof until now. I tried to tell you, Dad, but no one would listen. His shoulders sagged under the weight of my words. And all this time, I believed them over you. The room was silent, the weight of his confession hanging heavy in the air. The wedding ended abruptly. Guests began to leave, some muttering in disbelief, others too uncomfortable to stay. Kate and Ryan disappeared into the chaos, no doubt scrambling to figure out their next move. Dad called an emergency meeting with the board the following day. He presented the evidence I had uncovered, and it was enough to clear my name. Kate and Ryan's accounts were frozen, and legal proceedings were set in motion. But the damage went deeper than the company. A week later, Dad called me to his office. He looked older, more tired than I had ever seen him. "Emily," he began, his voice heavy, "I owe you an apology. I failed you. I let my own biases blind me, and I didn't stand by you when you needed me most." I swallowed hard, the years of pain bubbling to the surface. "Dad, I just wanted you to believe in me, to see me the way you see Kate." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "I see it now. I see the strength, the integrity, the brilliance you bring to everything you do. You saved this company, Emily, and you saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life." He paused, then added, "I want you to take over as CEO." The words hit me like a tidal wave. "What?" "You built this company with me," he said. "You've earned it, and I know now that there's no one better for the job." For a moment, I was speechless. This was everything I had worked for, everything I had dreamed of. But it came at such a high cost. Taking the position wasn't easy. The transition was filled with challenges, from repairing the company's reputation to rebuilding trust within the team. But I threw myself into the work, determined to prove that I was more than the lies Kate and Ryan had spun about me. As for Kate, she went into hiding for a while, avoiding the media storm that followed. Ryan faced legal consequences, and their relationship eventually crumbled under the pressure. Dad and I began to mend our relationship, slowly but surely. He attended therapy to address the blind spots in his parenting. And I worked on letting go of the resentment I had carried for so long. Months turned into years, and Parker Innovations thrived under my leadership. The company expanded into new markets, and our profits soared higher than ever. But more importantly, I finally felt like I belonged, not because I proved anything to anyone, but because I believed in myself. Kate and I never fully reconciled. She made half-hearted attempts to reach out, but trust was something that couldn't be rebuilt overnight, or maybe ever. Some wounds leave scars too deep to fade entirely. But I didn't need her approval anymore. I had my own life, my own successes, and a future I could be proud of. As I looked out from my corner office one afternoon, the city skyline stretching before me, I thought back to that day at the wedding. It wasn't just the day I cleared my name. It was the day I took back my life. Some truths are painful, but they're necessary. And sometimes, the hardest battles lead to the greatest triumphs. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. This was my story, my truth, and I had no regrets.